So meeting called to order at 7:05. David, Michelle, Mike Townsley, Tanya, and John are all present. If Jim shows up, great, but we'll start without him. Any citizens' concerns? Okay, I don't see any hands. Approval of the minutes. Did you guys have a chance to, I guess Joanne did send the minutes out from the two previous, not the last meeting, but the two ones prior to that. Anybody want to make a motion to accept those minutes?
Mike, I think I read them when they came through, so I'll move their acceptance.
Okay, all right. Michelle, you want to second that? Give me a thumbs up if you want.
What am I seconding?
Just the minutes.
No need to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And I realized Kristen said that I've been taking the writing the minutes down, and I can send the recording to
I thought I
our
did.
secretary, and she can take the minutes for that. So we'll go. That's probably what I'll do with last week's and this week's meeting. Michelle, can you mute, please? Okay. All right, so moving on, update. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Tanya for the updates. And actually, just before we get started with that, Tanya, I just want to mention that John, Tanya, Kristen, and myself had a conversation with the overseer on Friday afternoon or Friday morning. And that's one of the reasons why we're back here tonight, just to make some changes that he recommended. And actually, I had called Kristen in the morning about it before I even talked with Tanya. And it was actually regarding something that David had brought up, and it got me thinking about Tanya had mentioned 3% in the funds, and then David had said 5%. And I was thinking about the 80,000 use of the school choice funds, and it got me thinking that we should probably leave that there. And then John had talked to Kristen also, and then so we ended up having a meeting with Rick, and he actually felt the same way about it. So with that being said, I'll let Tanya take over, and she can explain it better than what I just did, I would think.
So this meeting will be pretty short and sweet. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Excuse me, I'll zoom this in a little bit. So just to kind of echo what Mike was just saying, we talked to the overseer, and at our last meeting, we decreased what we were going to offset the sixth grade move up down to 80,000. He told us to, make some adjustments, bring it back to him. He wanted to take a look at it. So we did that. And basically the only adjustment in this budget that you're seeing or going to see, or that you were sent, was the removal of the remainder of that 80,000. So the first round of this budget only had the 662,000 as an offset to insurance, which included the reserve of the 127 or so that I had anticipated needing to use for the GIC increase this year, going the other direction. And then our estimated revenue for FY22, which is the same as our FY21 revenue. So based on the overseer's recommendation, we remove the 80,000 from the PVRS salaries offset completely. And that will leave us with an estimated school choice fund balance at the end of FY22 of 425-ish thousand, which is pretty close to 1 year's choice revenue. It's not quite there, but we're pretty close to it. And he he feels more comfortable with that, and splitting that 80,000 across the 4 towns, considering in the spring, he also felt was reasonable to ask of the towns based on the minimal increase that we have provided in the prior 2 years. So just so you can see here real quick, under the non-budget for the PVRS salaries, we took away the 80,000. And what that does, oh, hello. Oh, this updated. Hold on a second. I hate when you download stuff from emails because it doesn't always, it likes to update it and then it doesn't always do what you want it to do. So bear with me just a second. I'm just going to share this screen instead of the actual Excel. And I apologize that I'm not videoing. I'm actually sitting in my car in front of my daughter's dance studio tonight. So I don't know if you guys can see this. I unfortunately can't zoom in because it is the email platform. But basically what this does is brings the town's assessments, the regular assessment, up to $9,293,071, which is still about 20,000 less than what we were originally proposing last year in FY21. And then we have the capital assessment of the 8,677 still for the carpets at the high school. Looking at the percentage increases, we added in a comparison here to the FY20 budget. And basically since FY20, even though, it looks like we have an almost 5% increase, our overall increase since FY20 is 0.32%. So compared to the budget 2 years ago, we're only increasing it, about $30,000. So,
Tanya, can I just interject? And that was one of the talking pieces with Rick was that was one of the main reasons he felt that the 80,000 should stay in that school choice, because from 20 to now cumulative, it's 0.32, and he felt that wasn't much of an increase, and that the 80,000 would help us more in FY23.
Correct. And I also sent you guys updated the assessment calculations would look like based on that, so you guys can see what the assessments are here with that adjustment compared to the assessment sheet that was sent out at the last meeting for January 28th. So the towns can take a look at that. And again, obviously it's the 80,000 times your percentage for each of the towns. And then this is your summary of all the sections again in a little bit more streamlined form. One of the things I wanted to bring up, which I'm sure some of you have heard talks about, but this stuff is being finalized and it won't have an effect on the actual vote of our budget, is the excuse me, I'm trying to stop sharing my screen, is the Sr2 Grant that's coming out, that allows us to allot up to 75% of our Sr2 grant to assist the towns that had increase in their minimum local contributions. That for us would be about 85,000, but the town's actual increases in minimum local contribution, I'm actually going to share my screen again just to show you guys this real quick so you can see it's only able to be used to offset that increase in minimum local contribution, not the actual total contributions. So if you guys can see, Northfield and Warwick are the only 2 towns that actually had an increase in their minimum local contribution. So if I'm attending a conference tomorrow or a webinar on that to get some more details, and then we can have discussions with those 2 towns. Unfortunately, Leiden's minimum contribution and Bernardston's minimum contribution were a decrease over last year, so those funds wouldn't be able to be used to offset those 2 towns' assessments. But again, it doesn't affect the budget and the assessment income to the district from the towns. It would just basically supplement that assessment for the towns when it comes time for them to pay. So I just want to touch base with that on that. I don't know how much the towns have heard about that, but I didn't want to not bring that up while we were in here, just so you guys know that we are aware of it, and we'll keep everybody posted once we have the appropriate information and what that process will look like. Does anybody have any questions? All the documents are ready and to be posted on the website as soon as this meeting's over for the public hearing. We just were waiting to present that proposal of the decrease of using the 80,000 in school choice. So we present recommend.
Tanya, Michelle had her hand up.
Oh,
And
sorry,
then David does too. Go ahead, Michelle.
So Tanya, I don't know anything about this minimum contribution, but it's just another unknown. How can we approve a budget if we don't know what what the impact will be to the assessments? I'm confused.
Because the budget can be approved when the assessment certified to the towns is a completely separate process from the actual budget. As we go through the budget process, we have being transparent and open with the towns and having that communication up front so that we can have these back and forth conversations. We have presented what those assessments will be based on the budget in advance. That's not how it was done in the past. The assessments weren't even presented until the public hearing, but those assessments, the district will essentially receive the same assessment amount regardless from the town, but it's the possibility that that 5,000 for Northfield and Warwick would just be funded from the grant versus the actual town. So once we have more information, when I have the treasurer certify those assessments to the town, if the towns in the district agree to use those funds to offset that small amount for each of those towns, it would show as an adjustment to the assessment when we certify those to the towns for presentation on their annual town meeting. So it doesn't affect our bottom line budget. The assessment income to the district stays the same. It's just the source of it would not be the town, it would be that grant.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
So also, Michelle, we're as a school committee approving a budget number, or perhaps if we're approving a categorical budget, or hopefully not a line item budget, but we're approving the budget, not how it plays out to the member towns. That's not what we're approving. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but is the agenda call for a recommendation from this committee to the hearing or to the full school committee at this time? Do you want a motion?
Yes, it does, David. Under line item 7 on the agenda, it says vote to present admin recommended budget at public hearing and make a recommendation to the full school committee.
Well, I stand ready to do that whenever it's time.
Okay, well, if you would like to do that now, you can.
Okay, I move that the budget committee recommend this budget. And Michelle's waving. Maybe she just wants to come in.
Go ahead, David. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
Before we move on a budget, a proposal, I still want to see 5-year projections.
Okay, well, can we need
that for the public hearing.
Okay, so David's got a motion on the floor to make a recommendation, and can we talk about the 5-year projection after we move this recommendation? Right.
So this really has to do with recommending this increase in contradict what I just said, I guess, because it does shift more to the towns, but but this is in support of that change that my motion is.
Okay.
And I would understand that, in order to, and that's to recommend it to the committee. I can understand, Michelle, your need in order to vote for the budget after the hearing, to have certain documentation. And so that's certainly implied.
Yeah. Okay. If you second it, Michelle, we can have more discussion.
Can I just ask that you guys recommend the amount of the 14,851,290 so that it's in the minutes accordingly?
All right, slow that down. Just say it again so I can write it without looking it up. Or if you want to put the spreadsheet up and David can read from it, that's fine too.
No, I approve what Tanya just spoke.
Okay, just give me that number, Tanya, again.
14,851,290.
Okay.
Includes
right.
operating and capital.
Okay. And that's the 80,000 left in the school choice account is one of the parameters of this discussion. All right.
To the PVRS salary line of $80,000, removing the school choice funding.
Correct. Okay. Did I hear a second? Did Michelle second that? I can't remember now. My brain's fried.
No, I didn't second it. I thought someone else did.
No, that's what I'm asking. It's just us three and I'm the chair. I can't do it.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, I am conflicted. First of all, I'm going to tell you the numbers changed from last week, and it's a higher assessment to the towns.
Yeah, but we got a motion. Michelle, we've got a motion on the floor. If you want to second it, we can discuss it further. Because when you second
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to discussion. Go ahead, Michelle, with your comments.
Well, so now I have 5 things that I've written down here. I understand the 80,000. We did not hear last week about the 0.32 cumulative percent of school choice money. We decreased 2 teachers for middle school, even though when we had the vote for middle school, we told parents and the school committee that we were going to support the full funding of 4 to 5 new teachers. I've asked for 5-year projections. I haven't seen it. And now we find out something, about the minimum contribution. I totally understand it's not towards the budget. It's their assessment. But it's almost like we keep getting new information.
So, Michelle, can I just interrupt you for a second? Because you mentioned the 0.32. The 0.32 came out of discussions with Rick Kingsley because he's looking from FY20 through now. And the reason it was better to leave the 80,000 where it was because the cumulative from FY20 to this budget isn't that much of an increase. And he see that it was better. The 80,000 is going to help us pay dividends down the road than what the increases are right now. And it's not really from FY21 original to the FY22 now, we're at a negative 0.40%. Correct, Tanya?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so that is my concern going forward about this school choice money. I'm very concerned with this middle school vote, as you know, that we're doing a 1-year, year-to-year budget. And I'm very concerned down the road. What if we don't have the school choice money? What if it doesn't increase?
So
like we're hoping.
I guess what I want to say to that is one of the reasons we're saving that 80,000 is to help offset the budget, is one of the main purposes. You said at the last week's meeting that you wanted to have the money there to extend us down the road further.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do. And Rick Kingsley agrees with that. It was, one of his main arguments also. And it was kind of strange that John, myself, and Rick were on the same page, and we hadn't even talked yet. And I called Kristen, John called Kristen, and then they talked with Tanya, they talked with the overseer, and then they called me and Tanya into the equation in the conversation once they had started talking about it. And I only brought it up because I liked what David had to say. His number was a little bit higher, I think. Maybe David could help me with it, the 5% he was talking about having in that fund. But I'm thinking to myself, why would we want to use the 80,000 when it would pay dividends down the road further? And that's the reason I brought it up to Kristen the next morning. And then she had already heard from John that night after the meeting. John had gotten thinking about it. So as far as the positions, Kevin had put forward an ideal plan, and it was an ideal plan. It wasn't etched in stone. It was about what we could do to improve education. Now, as you know, we can't do everything at once. We can do what we can afford. The towns wanted a level funded budget, and we're going to come in under that level funded budget.
No, you're not.
Well, we're going to be a negative 0.40 under the original FY21. You can't really. What's that?
That is not what we were billed and what we are paying.
Well,
that argument is not going to fly on the town meeting floor. You better come up with a new one.
Well, that's how I see the numbers on the spreadsheet. Tanya, if you want to explain it a little bit more, so it's a little bit clearer, go ahead.
I don't need any further explanation. I've heard it meeting after meeting, and I've said the same thing. You can't compare it to what might have been. You have to compare it to what happened.
So we cut 4.29%. So we cut 4.29% from our budget last year and put funds in place so that we could roll over funds from FY20 as one time to help the towns, because we knew that there was going to be impacts to your unrestricted aid because of COVID. So had COVID not happened, that budget would not have been amended. We would have rolled the excess revenue that would come to the general fund, that would have rolled into E&D. So the 170,000 we got over what we anticipated for our transportation, because we were super conservative because we couldn't get a percentage from the state, that would have rolled into E&D and been used for years down the road. But instead, we set up a regional transportation reimbursement fund so that we could specifically use it to offset the transportation expense for this next year. So that was 170,000 of the cut. In addition, we cut other staff and made other supplies that were not ideal, but we did it to help the towns with their assessments because of the unknown revenue situation in this year. But that restricted aid is supposed to resume, and with a 3.5% increase based on what the overseer is telling us, as well as the Department of Local Services.
Okay, David's got his hand up.
Jane, I support this because it is in the long-term financial interest of the district. This is a district that my town wants to leave, but from my perspective of the interest of the school committee, it makes sense that when we can run a budget surplus, that we move money where we can and manage to place money in funds where it's allowed and keep away from the E&D threshold, but not expend the money and have a cushion. My town wanted to, and I wasn't all of the opinion causing it, but we modeled with a 30% reduction of local aid, and then the governor's budget came through and setting our tax rate, and we were told, no, state law says you got to use this estimated receipt number. I know about 9 seat cuts and such, but I appreciate the district doing that one-time thing. but this is in the best interest of the district to not plow this back where we are. I mean, I think we can continue to build reserves and behave this way, and we can probably somehow get out from under the 10-year shroud here. You know, they wouldn't let us buy out after the first year, but the more we behave like this, the sounder we are, more sound we are, and I think we can get our freedom.
Well,
Okay.
you know, if you guys had allowed the towns to pay off the school lunch debt, we wouldn't even have had to take a loan. I'm not opposed to what you're saying. What I'm opposed to is trying to sell it against the original budget. Because I am already hearing from people in town that that's not going to work. So what I'm trying to advise you is come up with a better presentation.
I'll work with Mike on that.
Good luck.
Thanks, Jane.
Well, you know, Mike, I never hold my cards back.
I know you don't. That's what I like about you.
Yeah.
There's a John Prine song about this. You don't know how lucky you are. You can look it up.
I do want to follow up with what Michelle said. Just ask Tanya. I just want to ask Tanya a quick question. After tonight's meeting, how long do you think it would take to do projections, 3, 4, and 5 years? You know, would it take you a week, 2 weeks, or?
So the issues right now that we know we're voting this budget with the 6th grade, it does make it easier to do future projections with the staffing that's in place. We have to do what's kind of what the people did for the Montague, where they did like a no change, nothing happens, whatever. But as you know, the district has continued to make efficiencies and looking at things. But I can take the current budget, I can take the current union increases, and I can project out what 5 years would look like with our current staffing, things like kids aging out, the transportation contract increasing, those type of things that we know right now. But that's similar to a do nothing scenario that the Mark Abrams group did for the Gil Montague. And one of the things I just wanted to touch base on when we're talking about the staffing for the 6th grade too, it's very similar to what happened when we closed schools and moved people to Northfield and Bernardston. Those staffing against enrollment numbers will continue to be looked at. And if we don't end up needing the 3 teachers that moved to, say, Northfield from Warwick, not this coming year, but the following year, once we know how many kids are actually coming back that chose to homeschool, those will be additional savings. So once this moves up next year, which is why I was hoping to use some school choice money to offset it to mitigate the increase to the towns, the staff and the administration can evaluate the system, the process, the model being used, and look to make efficiencies, but still provide the educational benefits that were intended of moving 6th grade up.
All right, David has his hand raised again, I think.
I did, but I can't remember anymore. I was listening to Tanya intently, and I forgot my point.
Okay,
It'll probably return if it was any good.
All right, I think, Tanya, you know, if we can get some kind of baseline, even if it's a do nothing.
I know, Mike, I know what it is.
Go ahead.
Tanya, I think you could get the Abrams Group's spreadsheets. I might even have them as a member, but they were really high. They were very much they were very high on your stock. They are impressed. I think they'd share, and you could build on what they've already done.
And that's basically what I'll do is I'll use those platforms and I'll basically plug in our current year's budget with some of the percentage increases, and I'll use that so I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so the number that we're voting on tonight is the $14,851,290. Do we want to move to a vote?
I do.
Okay, Michelle.
All right, I'll move. Oh, wait a minute. We already have a motion.
Yeah.
I'll second it with the caveat that we see projections. I think we need something for the public hearing for the towns to see.
All right. Well, we'll work on that.
And the presentation, as Jane has asked
Okay.
for,
Yeah.
and and the projections have to include salary increases.
Yeah, she said that.
Yeah, so
Oh,
they'll
she did?
She said that. So let's get finished up on this vote, and then we'll carry on with the next information, I guess, or discussion. David?
I vote aye.
Michelle?
Aye. Oh, shoot, my battery's going dead.
That's all right. I got your vote. Mike Townsley, yes. Plug it in. You'll stay with us.
Going to look for my,
Okay. Tanya, if you want to just give us some more information if you want.
So as far as having it ready for the public hearing, unfortunately, as soon as we get off this meeting, I have to email the PowerPoint presentation and the PDF budget to Tyler to post on the website to be in compliance with the at least 48 hours prior to the public hearing posting for the documents. So anything that I would produce after that would be in violation of that. We do have a school committee meeting next week, which I'll be preparing for tomorrow and Monday. I could potentially try to at least have a couple years prepared before the vote of the school budget on the 11th, but I could not have something prepared by 5 o'clock tomorrow morning to post for the public hearing deadline of the 48 hours.
Okay. Well, do what you can with what you have. I respect that answer. And, times, once again, we seem to always, run out of it, but still you could if you could do those projections, at least send them to the budget subcommittee members, Michelle, David, Jim, and I, and at least we can see what we're looking at.
And the finance.
What's that?
No, I think that I ought to, in fairness, disclose something I'm thinking of doing.
Yeah, go
no,
ahead,
I'm
David.
going to do it. It takes a 2/3 vote of the school committee to approve the budget. Okay, 2/3 vote of the school committee, and there are 6 of us who do not think that this 6th grade move is wise, and feel it should be delayed. So we could have our own sort of budget resolution or whatever the Senate's using to push something through on 50 votes. If 5 people on the school committee don't show up for the vote or vote no, the budget's defeated. And we are school committee members and can influence the budget and how it's used, instead of a town meeting where mine tried to influence certain spending of the school committee. You can't, town meeting can't, but we can. So effectively 5 of us could hold the budget hostage for delaying the 6th grade move. And I intend to do that. And I don't want to be a snake. Well, I may be a snake in the grass, even though disclosing it, but I feel like I should, because it seems like maybe Michelle is sort of setting up a precondition for her approval of voting on the budget. And I don't want you to work. I don't want Tanya and Mike and your leadership to feel like I did on Warwick, where we worked really hard to answer questions financially, and then we're told at the last minute that, well, it's really about resource allocation anyway. It's not about equalizing the expenditures. So I would say that that's on the table here.
Well, I take that respectfully, David, but I think in past years, is it, maybe Tanya or John can correct me, but do we go line by line in that budget at the school committee meeting?
No, it would just be, I'd be voting down the budget total that I just approved recommending on the basis of the fact that I'm not voting yes until we get the assurance school committee and the administration that we're going to delay the 6th grade move.
Yeah, well, I guess, good luck to you. I mean,
Well, you know, you're hanging your hat on this move now on a 6-to-6 school committee. And it's ultimately the DESI commissioner's, you know, decision, and people are starting to call and write. But it's on the faith of a 6-to-6 school committee at this point, Michael. And at this point, the super minority of 5 can hang up this budget until this direction is reversed.
well,
Delayed.
it may be hung up. Because the school committee's spoken and they want 6th grade to move. I mean, I'm not here to debate that. I'm here to get
Well,
this.
you're not going to get a budget. You're very well not going to get a budget approved by the school committee, sir.
Well, I don't know that. We haven't got to that.
Reversed, because 6-to-6 school committee is what you're dealing with now. The school committee no longer approves, sir.
Well, the school
I will
committee,
also cause to be initiated an open meeting complaint, which would cause a do-over.
well, that's for the next meeting. I'm just here to take care of this part.
All right. Well, I felt honor bound to disclose what I have in mind.
And I respectfully, like I said, I respectfully accept that. But our job is to make a recommendation. What happens at that meeting happens at that meeting. That's not my business. I'm one vote on the school committee. So, go ahead, Tanya.
Mike, should we potentially have another school committee meeting scheduled for Monday the 15th in the event that this budget doesn't pass? Because by regional agreement, the school committee has to vote and pass a budget by February 15th, or we're in violation of our regional agreement.
That's a holiday, Tanya.
Oh, yeah. So.
Well, I'm not, you know what?
Friday.
I don't get into the what ifs or whatever right now. We get to the meeting, we do our business. I'm one vote. My job is to run this meeting, have a recommendation. I'm one vote here. We'll take it to the floor, let the full school committee decide. And if the budget fails, the budget fails. And if we go backwards in education, I can say I fought the fight to try to further education in this district, and that's what I'm going to stand on. For those that want to, think about taking 4% away from the budget that was turned back, so be it. If it passes, it passes. I'm one vote. I'm not here to argue about that. Let the full committee decide where we want to go.
Michael, I will vote the full dollar amount if you take this off the table, and now you have a path forward to get this approved. It's a 6-to-6 school committee. Read the tea leaves, sir. You have a way to get this passed in time and to answer Tanya's question. Take it off the table.
Take what off the table?
6th grade move.
That's not our job. We're to make a recommendation on the budget, and the school committee. I move that the budget committee recommend to the full school committee that the 6th grade move be delayed by 1 year.
That gives a good preparation for the move. And I would, if I were on this committee, second that in a moment. This is just happening too fast, and that's a long time.
Well, all I can say is this is what I get to say about that. Listen, Jane, this is what I get to say. Last year's 6th graders are going to be 8th graders. Guess what? They're not going to get the same opportunity that my kids got, or the kids will get that are going to get the opportunities that are added to the 6th grade middle school model that benefits the district. The 6th graders, like I said, that left last spring when this pandemic started, they're going to be in 8th grade. So now they'll be going to 9th grade with only 1 year of possible improvements in their middle school model education. So my fight's going to be improve education Now, if you delay education for 7th and 8th grade also. So that, if you guys want to second that and pass it and delay education by a year, have at it. But at least I can say I fought to improve education now and not delay education. You can't get that education back once you've gone through the classes. So, Michelle, if you want to second it and have further discussion, that's fine, then we'll vote.
Yeah, I'll second it because I've still got a lot of concerns, like I said, about my 5 concerns about the budget. So I want to discuss it more then. I wasn't planning on this, but I'd like to hear more on what the difference would be in the budget.
Tanya, do you have the numbers for the 6th grade? And then I'd like to have Kevin Burke speak to what the improvements are to our education and how the teachers in 6th grade would work with the middle school model and how that improves the plan in that aspect versus if the 6th grade teachers were still working in the elementary model, not collaborating with the middle school 7th and 8th graders.
So I gave that number out at last week's meeting, and I have to go back and find it because, like I said, I'm sitting in my car. And I want to say it was 238 and change that it worked out to be with the teachers and the special ed teacher for the 6th grade. But once we took out the 0.4 and the extra 0.5 for the music and tech, that went down. Log back into that PVRS salaries and special ed budget and get those figures for you if you guys want to discuss. Or have Kevin answer the question that you just asked him.
Yes. Kevin,
Hi.
you with us? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm with you. So, I mean, I did present the last time a whole document that showed all the curriculum. I tried to present a balanced presentation so the school committee could make that decision. Are there specific questions you want me to answer, Michael?
I guess first off would be, as a 6th grade teacher, there's 4 of them, working in the current setting, do we have to get programs that individually at the elementary schools versus what they would normally have in a middle school model?
Well, so the main difference is when you're dealing with an elementary school certification is you're dealing with a general certification where generally you have a 6th grade teacher that teaches multiple content areas. When you have a middle school model, you're dealing with a 5 through 8 certification, which is actually what the state of Massachusetts has for middle school certification. And those are content level specific or content grade specific. So in other words, students will be getting content level science, math, English, and social studies to match up with the state standards by individual teachers. It will be a middle school model, which bodes better with the curriculum and the standards. And that's what was presented when I presented before.
Okay, and that helps them in the 6th grade middle school model with that. And then on the 7th grade level, how does that, the new model improve them? What was the ELA that you were talking about the last time I had a discussion?
So there's ELA, which is basically English language arts, and then there's ELL. The ELL was separate from the middle school model.
Correct.
But
Can I just jump in? I'm not sure, Mike, this is Megan, if you're referring to the additional portions that were put in the budget for the ELA curriculum?
Correct.
Correct. That's specific to the elementary school. That's unrelated unrelated to any kind of change in structure.
But I think that was correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya, that funding was part of this whole package.
Yeah, so the ELA new curriculum, that is part of the regular budget. That has nothing to do with the 6th grade. But if the 6th grade were going to stay at the elementary level, we would need additional funds So the 198,044, which is the net sixth grade cost after we removed those 2 ideal positions, we would be adding more professional development and more textbooks for those sixth grade teachers, those 4 sixth grade teachers to stay at both Bernardston and NES. So that's 4 classrooms and PD for those 4 teachers. And Ariel would have to put those teachers together for us, so I would know what to add. So we wouldn't be saving the whole 198,044 for the 6th grade move, because we would then be adding back to the budget for the ELA curriculum at the elementary, where the middle school, I believe, which I think Kevin just spoke to while I was looking for those numbers, they already have a system in place that they're using that they would use for the 6th graders.
And that was I think that was my point. My point with that, on that matter, was that if you delayed it a year, we're going to get those items for a 1-year thing. So we're actually wasting money.
Can I respond to that, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 schools of thought there. If we knew that the 6th grade move was happening the following year, we wouldn't purchase that program for our 6th graders. We would, in fact, some schools purchase new curriculum in phases. We've decided to go forward with it from K to 5 so that we can build all of our professional development in at once and not stagger that over time. But if the 6th grade didn't move and we didn't want to put funds into something that would only be 1 year, we would simply hold off on that, unless it made sense to do so for carrying over to the middle school. But that would be a curriculum discussion with Ariel and Kevin and those involved.
I'd also like to point out to the budget committee that as we proposed the budget, we proposed it with the approved 6th grade move up, and didn't look at any other changes we would have looked at versus this. So all the changes at Pioneer are put on this 6th grade move up, because we knew that was going to be an expense in and of itself. So just putting that out there.
Michelle?
And then what about the vice principal too? That's included in the 198?
Sorry, I have to add 17,000 to that because I forgot that we aren't funding that with school choice. So that brings it to 215, the switch from the dean of students to the assistant principal. And then there's also supplies in there, but because that was done on a per pupil basis, I want to say there's probably, Kevin, about an extra 4,000 in supplies across the board based on the 6th grade moving up. But he calculated that by subject, by student. So I don't have the exact supplies cost that I can pull out for the 6th grade off the top of my head right now. We'd have to go back and he'd have to calculate that for us.
And how long does this, Tanya, how long do these supplies follow? Will these supplies be in the budget for the going forward every single year?
Yes, so these are the supplies that are in there, those are consumables. Textbooks are a separate line. The supplies that are in the budget, those are consumable items that are used every year based on enrollment. So they do the same thing at the elementary school. They have X amount per teacher based on the amount of students in the classrooms for things like papers, math, manipulative, certain things that are consumable from what I understand how that goes. So it's not stuff that would stay in the classroom. It's also workbooks and things like that.
And Kevin, Tanya, we were going to be getting new Chromebooks for the 6th and 7th graders at Pioneer in this move. Would that still happen if we didn't move?
So the one set of the Chromebooks would not get purchased.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler Plus is not on here, but I will say, I believe he considers a set, and I can't remember off the top of my head how many 6th graders are moving up, but basically 50 Chromebooks at $300 a piece is 15,000. So that 15,000 would also be a savings. If we were to have to go back and redo this budget for the 6th grade not going, we would basically be starting from scratch again, because even though we can pull out individual expenses at a higher level, there's like Kevin's saying, this whole thing was planned and based on staffing wise and supply wise and everything else on that 6th grade move up. So it's not just the salaries and supplies that are affected. Tech is affected, the special ed budget's affected. And there's probably other things that we're not even thinking about right now that would have to be moved. And quite frankly, we're running out of time because we started this process so late with the new school committee coming in and not being able to have a meeting for a month after we would normally have it because we couldn't vote the chair until after the committees were comprised at the following December school committee meeting.
David's got his hand
Hey,
up.
Mike, are people just talking or
David, go ahead.
Tanya, that's too bad, but you should have seen it coming. Ultimately, this decision, which to my knowledge has not been approved by the commissioner, this is because closing the school, realignments, and reconfigurations are, I mean, 49 years I've lived in this district and been a voter. 14 years I've been working for the town of Warwick for the select board and have my pulse on this district. 6+ years I've been on the school committee, and there's two things that frost me. One is Google School, and the other one's middle school. We never voted to be either. We never voted to be a middle school. We never voted to embrace the middle school model, unless the 6th grade move was it. But our district agreement calls for a elementary through 6th grade and junior high, senior high.
I think you got to look
The
at
school
the
committee I sat on screwed up, and we got the acts of 2018, and that gives the ability to approve this 6th grade thing. I'm telling you, this budget is not going to pass if you do this. You played power politics on a tie vote on reconsideration. I'm playing power politics on this. 5 people. And it's 2/3 vote of the school committee, not those present and voting. Anybody misses the vote, that's a no vote.
That's nothing to do with me, David. I'm just bringing it to the table.
Bring forth as our leadership a plan that can get this thing passed. Bring it to the hearing. Tell the people we're going to have an actual genuine process, and we're going to do this thing in an orderly fashion. I will not stand by while we harm children, Michael.
Well,
Mike,
hold on a second, Jane. There's going to be a lot of kids and parents disappointed that their kids didn't go to the middle school model that improves education. And that's my fight, and I'll fight it until the vote has happened. And if the budget doesn't pass, I'll come back and we'll do another budget. And that's how I see it. I mean, when it comes to the floor, we can make a recommendation, but when it comes to the floor and it opens up for discussion, I'm going to make the fight to improve education. We don't have the classes that my kids had when they went to Pioneer. And unfortunately, this district's been mismanaged, and they've robbed the kids of education at least for 12 years because the school committee management messed up. And I wasn't part of that. But if you remember, I came for 2 years before running for school committee, and nobody wanted to listen to Jane. They didn't want to listen to me. They didn't want to listen to the select board. Now it's time to put things back and stop delaying education. We don't have the courses that they used to have. And if we put some back this year and it costs some money and we're still at a -40 over the original voted FY21, whether people want to hear that or not, those are the facts. So we're going to have kids that are getting delayed education. So I think it's time for a vote. We'll make a recommendation to the school committee, and so be it. And we'll fight it out there. That's how I see it.
my turn.
I want to move to the vote, please.
Mike, you asked me to wait a minute. Can I speak before you vote?
Go ahead.
I think that comparing to when your kids were in school is comparing apples and oranges, because there was a much bigger population back back in those ancient days. And your kids would love me calling them ancient. But as far as population goes, it is ancient. We might have another surge in another 5 years after this coronavirus thing, but we aren't aware of that yet. Also, I want to suggest that my memory says in the past, you have often come to the full committee with options 1, 2, and 3 on the budget. And this might be a compromise this year to go with option 1 and 2 at least. That's all I wanted to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. John?
The only thing I wanted to say is we do have a lot of young families and young students that want to come to the district, especially in Bernardston, where we're thinking about creating another preschool program. So if you want to grow the district, we need to have space at the elementary schools to do so. We can't turn these students away. That's how you grow anything, is you start at the base with the youngest students. So that's all I wanted to say. We do have a lot of families, young families that have moved into the district and want to educate their children in our schools.
Michelle?
Well, the only thing, and this is not against you personally, Jonathan, then I say we did not do our homework and look at the data to close both Leiden and Warwick Elementary School. We should have been doing 5-year projections. I wasn't on the committee, so, but that should have been definitely looked at where the children are and how many there are. And so I think, we can't go backwards, but the data should have been looked at.
Well, it was looked at, Michelle, because the
building.
consultants did the study. They looked at it. We looked at it. These are new families that are moving in with children. So the homework was done. You're not going to grow a district if you keep turning district students away at the youngest ages. So you can talk all about about efficiencies, but if you're not going to make the changes, the district, unfortunately, is never going to grow. And maybe you should look at doing a merger with Gil Montague or another district. Because I don't know if we can survive like this. And that's just being honest.
John, I think what she was saying is that it wasn't, as things turned out, such a wise idea to close Warwick if space is an issue.
Right. That's what I was saying.
And we're, I can report that we've repaired all the neglect on our HVAC system and gotten belts back on, air handlers and such. And we've installed negative ionization units in the ductwork, which treat the air with negative ions, which attach to viruses and bacteria and dust and mold and such. And they so they make a safer environment. We have an environment with, but we didn't see COVID coming. But the building is not going to be a public school next year either. And we're doing everything to run it as, because it's easier to keep everything certified, water system, kitchen inspection, everything certified to reopen as a school. So this year we're reopenable as a school building, and next year we will be too. So if this COVID thing gets bad enough, we should talk.
Tanya?
If we had seen COVID coming and we knew that everybody from urban towns that were going to be able to work remotely and no longer needed to live in New York City or Boston to be able to keep their job, wanted to move to rural Massachusetts, we would have planned for this, but nobody could have planned for COVID and the increase in populations in the rural areas.
Michelle?
So what?
Sorry, I thought
Okay.
I put my hand
David?
down.
I'm sorry. I'm ready to vote.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. So what was the motion again on that, David?
The motion was to recommend to the full school committee this dollar budget, but that we delay sixth grade, moving this sixth grade subject to more process effectively.
keep the dollar budget, you said?
Yes.
Okay, so. Okay, David,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Mike Townsley? No. You guys have it. All right, so I'll have that. And the dollar budget's there. Tanya, you got anything else?
No, I'm just confused why we would recommend a budget that has an increase for sixth grade in it if we're recommending that it doesn't include sixth grade, because then you're putting $200,000 into a budget for something that's not happening.
Well, maybe we can
That's-
maybe we can add world language to the elementary schools like it was proposed originally. Maybe we can add some classes to the high school that have been cut in the past from the previous administration. There's all kinds of things we might be able to do with this money. But one of the main things is improve education.
I am sensitive to what Michael has said about quality. We can absolutely use that money to program and to provide for contingency. For, special needs contingency. Doesn't take much.
John, you got anything else to say?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Well, the only other thing I was thinking, because I agree with Tanya, why don't we have the budget and then, the budget that was voted and then the budget without sixth grade, the 215 or 200 with 30,000 is what I wrote down. Because the Chromebooks are going to be 15,000 and everything else is going to be 215.
The problem is
go ahead.
trying to prepare that to be in time for document and posting for the public hearing or the school committee meeting on the budget at this point.
Well, we'll be discussing it, I'm sure, but all right.
Okay, Tanya, you got anything else? I see your hands up.
No, I'm good. Sorry, I just need to put my.
All right, Kevin Burke, you got anything to add?
I am all set. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
You're going to talk about the assessments now?
Well, we can move on to that. Let's see, hold on a second. We're going to talk, let's see, we went to the vote. Let's see, PVRSD recommended FY22 assessments. Did you already touch the assessments, Tanya? I thought we did that already.
They've been provided and updated with the updated
Okay.
needed for the adjustment of 80,000.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier this evening.
You didn't mention the capital assessments, though.
So that's an unanticipated item. Those were not originally on the agenda. And that information had not actually been provided in advance of the meeting, but when I was putting the public hearing documents together, I had to do that for the public hearing. So I thought that information, since I had it, that I would go ahead and send that out to you guys, just so you had it in advance of the public hearing, with the new equalized values that were just approved on January 1st.
So I don't agree that carpet is capital. And why don't we just take it out of that additional money and have zero capital budget?
So anything over $5,000 is a capital expenditure per our regional agreement. And
well, then what are you talking? No, I'm just saying carpet is not capital. It's not the dollar amount. Then the Chromebooks are capital. Then
the life of the item also is why it is considered a capital item. But anything over $5,000 considered extraordinary maintenance, because it's a fixed asset, is considered capital per our regional agreement.
We don't pay much attention to our regional agreement. This just seems ridiculous.
We have had flooring on the capital budget for years.
All right.
And the life of it does exceed 5 years, which
What's
makes
the dollar amount?
it's $8,677.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, anybody else have anything else to say? Okay, Michelle, you want to second the motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, $8,000 for carpets is not capital. May the minutes so stay. Aye.
Michelle?
I'm going to abstain from that because we keep going. I don't even think we have a district agreement. So 1 minute we do and 1 minute we don't. I'm abstaining.
Until the new regional agreement is voted, we have to abide by the regional agreement that's currently in place.
I vote yes to adjourn. So the meeting's adjourned at 8:11. Have a good night, everybody.